Mary burst through the door on that momentous morning, carrying on about Jesus being raised from the dead. She told the story, and it fell on deaf ears, except for two guys who had to know. John, who referred to himself as the other guy, and the rock launched into a race to see what was going on for themselves. But John, being that bit younger, ran harder and faster like a Ford. He was first on race day, or rather first on resurrection day, and saw what was going on. He stopped in his tracks though at the doorstep. But when he finally crossed that finish line into the empty tomb, he says of himself that he finally saw and believed. As John spent the rest of his life reflecting on those years that he spent with Jesus and on the encounters he had with Jesus when he was raised from the dead, John came to understand that it was in Jesus the craftsman that he knew from Galilee that he had encountered the crafter of all things in existence, the one who was there from the very beginning. It's not half obvious that the words of Genesis and the words of Proverbs chapter 8 especially were foremost in his mind as John told the story again and again. Here in his letter, you can still hear the awe and wonder in John's words, written years later. We declare to you what was from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we've stared at and touched with our own hands concerning the word of life. In a few deft words, John also reminds us that in Jesus we encounter our future. This life was revealed and we have seen it and testify to it and declare to you the life of the age to come that was with the Father and was revealed to us. Jesus is the good future of the human race because he is good. In his gospel account, John lays out that future in a very masterful way. It's incredible to think that this guy was a rough fisherman, a volatile and passionate young man. Yet here he is with some of the most eloquent Greek words ever written, telling the story of Jesus and telling us how good the future of the human race is, especially through the I am statements that John remembers. I am the bread of life. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. So I tell you today, forget about fortune tellers, television presenters, YouTube channelers, and scientists. They know nothing. You want to know about your future. You want to know about the future of the world and the future of the human race. Go home and read John's account of Jesus today. Want the quick version? Go home and read John's first letter. He saw the future of the human race and he saw that it was good. And he not only got to see it, he got to hear it, and he got to touch it with his own hands. And the story he has to tell is like a kid on Christmas Day bursting to get out. He can't wait to tell it again and again, even as an old man. Our future joy is completed. Our future joy looks like playful and creative wisdom, laughing and doing a happy dance around us, around the human race, as the writer of Proverbs describes in chapter 8. And by the way, he was talking about Jesus. Our future is deathless. Our future is light where darkness has no place. Our future is love. Everyone, but our young folks in particular, are being beaten over the head and weighed down with a great weight at every turn, with words of doom about the perceived future of the world. There may be some grains of truth in what they say, but there is a lot of exaggeration and overinflation. The perceived climate threat, the perceived threat of nuclear war and the doom of China, the perceived threat of artificial intelligence, and the continued lack of clarity over what it means to be man and woman, to be human. There is a message of doom everywhere we turn, on our devices and on our televisions and radios. But as I say, even if there is a grain of truth in any of it, those threats, my friends, are ultimately nothing. The life of the age to come has walked out of the future to greet us. He has walked out of the tomb and left it empty to meet us in the person of King Jesus. John had good news to tell. We have good news to tell and a story of hope for the human race. While it's clear for John that personal experience of Jesus is extremely important, and you and I can have our own encounters and personal experience of Jesus today. You know, he saw, he heard, he stared, he touched. Some of us here have even done that ourselves as we've encountered the risen Jesus. But John knows that the Father has so ordered the universe that the most regular way people will first encounter fellowship with Jesus and his church is through the telling of his story. And so in the opening lines of his letter, he says repeatedly that he will declare, that he will declare, that he will testify like a man in court, that he will declare the facts about Jesus, the story of his life. It's like those stories about Jesus are jumping up and down inside of him and they can't wait to get out. You see, even though we who are rescued by Jesus know joy and know hope, our joy won't be complete until we can share the story. When we tell the story, it's like the rich butter icing on a delicious cake. It's not complete without it. Some are scared to share, some are still wondering what they would say if they were put on the spot. Don't be afraid. You are better armed than all the Christians that have gone before you, because you have the whole scriptures, and you have the wealth of the ages of the knowledge of Jesus that you have at your fingertips. No one else in the history of the world is better equipped to tell the story of Jesus than you are. Don't be afraid. I wonder, after all, how Justin felt in his office the other day, knowing that he had to preach the story of Jesus to potentially billions of people. No preacher in the history of the world has had that kind of stress laid on them. Yet I didn't want to watch the coronation. I thought, but I couldn't avoid it. And I was brought to tears in the spirit as I saw Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, testify to Jesus and declare Jesus, outline what kind of king he is, what kind of future humanity has in him, and speak truth to power gathered in that room. Just so locally, I was excited and moved to tears to see the story of Jesus bursting out of Sally this week as she wrote a profound little biblical reflection that she shared on Facebook and permitted me to put in our newsletter. I pray that Justin's and Sally's joy is made complete in them for their sharing. What have you seen and heard and touched of Jesus? What stories do you have to declare that are bursting to get out of you? May your joy be made complete. For Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.